Charlie smiled slightly. I will naturally consider this in the future. If the time is right, I will definitely not reject cooperation with Miss Nanako. That's good. Takehiko breathed a sigh of relief and said seriously, Mr. Charlie, I can see that Nanako likes you very much. If you two can have any possibility, then I'm so relieved. Charlie said immediately, Mr. Ito, Ms. Nanako is still very young. Don't talk about this kind of thing. If it spreads out and gets misunderstood, it will ruin Nanako's reputation. Takehiko waved his hand. My daughter has been raised for 22 years. No one in this world knows her better than me. I can see that she really likes you, and she likes you sincerely, if possible. I also suggest that you stay in Japan for development. You have JX Pharmaceutical and Nanako has the Ito family. If you two can combine to become a husband and wife, you will definitely become the top existence in Asia and even the world. Charlie smiled and asked, Mr. Ito should have investigated me? You should know that I am already married. I know. Takehiko Ito smiled slightly and said indifferently, what about being married? You are married, doesn't Nanako still like you? So, it's good for me and for Nanako. We don't care about your past and present. What we care about is your future. With that, Takehiko said very seriously, Mr. Charlie, after today's events, I have a very clear understanding of life. When people live, everything has meaning. Being rich means being rich, and being poor means being poor. If you die, no matter whether it is rich or poor, it will be nothing. If it were before today, I would never let my daughter marry a foreign man, but at this moment, these are no longer important to me. What is important is how to make my daughter happy. The important thing is, how can my daughter have the best life? Mr. Charlie has the ability, strength, and charm that a strong man should have. Nanako is cultivated, has a background, is strong external and internal, and she likes you so much. I believe you must have some feelings for Nanako in your heart. Otherwise, if you didn't, you would never travel all the way to Japan and make a special trip to Kyoto to see her, save her life, heal her injuries, and even drive a few hundred kilometers in the middle of the night to take her to Tokyo to see me. Charlie nodded and said, Mr. Ito, it is undeniable that Nanako is indeed a very good girl, but I still said that. I'm already married. Takehiko waved his hand and said, don't always prevaricate me by this getting married fact. You can divorce if you are married. Even if you don't leave, you can marry Nanako in Japan. As long as you don't go back, there is no problem. Charlie shook his head and smiled. Mr. Ito, I really appreciate some of the precious qualities of Miss Nanako, but what you said is still impossible. After a pause, Charlie said again, and I will not stay in Japan. Today, tomorrow at the latest, I will return to China. Takehiko smiled and said seriously, Mr. Charlie, you have an old Chinese saying that good birds choose wood and live in them. I have investigated your background. Forgive me to be honest, your current wife is not worthy of you. Charlie looked at Takehiko noncommittally, and asked with a smile, Mr. Ito seems to have studied Chinese culture very much. Just now he could say words like, dug a hole deep and accumulate grain, and now there is, good bird. Choose wood and live. You seem to be a Chinese expert too. Ito said seriously, when he was young, he admired Togo Heihachiro, who led the Japanese fleet to defeat the Russians in the Battle of Tsushima. I started to follow his footsteps, read Chinese history books, and learned a lot of Chinese culture and classical literature. Charlie nodded and said with a smile, Mr. Ito is so studious, really admirable, but I still want to make it clear to you, I will not divorce my wife. So, just ask Mr. Ito not to mention it again. Charlie said again, also, I am leaving Japan soon, so please don't mention this to Nanako, so as not to have a negative impact on her. Takehiko looked at Charlie and said seriously, Mr. Charlie, you Chinese pay attention to the cycle of fate. You see, before tonight, it was Nanako who was injured sitting in a wheelchair. The doctor also vowed to say that she might live a lifetime like that. Couldn't stand up anymore, but now? As Takehiko said, he reached out and patted his amputated knee lightly, and laughed at himself. Now, Nanako, who was declared by the doctor that it is impossible to stand up again, stands up again. But I lost my legs, so I said, ah, this life is a cycle. Charlie frowned and said, Mr. Ito, I don't quite understand what you mean. Ito said with a smile, I mean, even if you leave Japan today and swear that you will never come back again, when the wheel of fortune turns, it is likely to send you back here, even if you are unwilling. You can't help it. The same is true for your wife. Even if you think you will never divorce her, the wheel of fortune may one day separate you. Everything in the world is confusing and perplexing. Mr. Charlie is still young and there are still decades to go in his life. Why should he speak so absolute now?